Hi there, today I'd like to show you how I use some finger picking techniques on electric guitar. We're going to cover some classic rock style, like, you know, Mark Knopfler, Lindsey Buckingham, Jeff Beck. These guys all use their fingers, and so can you on electric, with clean sounds or with overdriven sounds. It works really well for both types of sounds. The first thing I like to do is let's take a simple chord progression. It's going to go from a G5 to an F5, but then we're going to add the major 7. And as always with finger picking techniques, you're going to find that the thumb has to work a lot, and thumb independence is very important. But if you actually learn any finger picking style, flamenco, classical, folk, you know, like Travis picking, in any of those styles, you have to develop thumb independence. So when people say, which technique is better for me to learn, I say, it doesn't matter which one you learn, just learn one, because any one of them is going to help you. Then you can learn another one. It's like if you're on an airplane, you know, chicken or pasta. You can have chicken now and pasta on the way back home, or order your veggie meal, or whatever you want. So here we go. The first example that I wanted to show you is simply just this G5 chord going to a G major 7 and then an F going to an F major 7. And now we gotta pay attention to this hand because we're talking about finger picking. So what I'm doing is I'm playing with my thumb on the low note and using these two fingers to pluck the strings third and second. So I go and repeat. Of course, you can do the same kind of thing with other types of chords, any kind of power chords, just like I'm showing you on the next example. If you look at measure number 5, for example, I have remember, the examples are not important because of what's exactly in the example. The examples that I give you are for you to actually experiment with these elements. So you got your power chords here and you have these. You can do a lot of things just plucking these two fingers and getting your thumb to like answer on the low note. And all I'm doing here, by the way, I'm just releasing these two fingers, so I am playing a C note, but then I'm making a bar with the index finger on the left hand, okay? So that would be the second example. In the next example, I wanted to show you some really typical triads. Mark Knopfler uses these a lot. Like, for example, the Stones also use these type of triads a lot, where you take 3 strings. If you look at measure number 13, we have C, then an F triad, then a B flat triad, and then an A triad. Let me play that in time. 1, 2, 3, 4. I put a little bass note at the end. Of course, you know, you will notice I wrote C and B flat, and you might say, well, but there is an F triad, why didn't he write C and F? The thing is, I don't really see this F as an F chord. I just see it as, I mean, it is an F chord, but you can also look at it as you're playing a C chord and now you're adding, you know, these two notes to it. So imagine, for example, if you were playing these over a chord progression where, you know, the band was just going, put it on top. And again, you could have also done the plucking with these 3 fingers, but I kind of like the sound of the thumb there. You can totally do it with 3 fingers. You can also add the roots on the low string if you feel very comfortable doing this and you want to add a little bit more bottom to it. You can go. That you can move that around anywhere. In the next example, we're gonna get a little bit busier with our thumb and with our 2 plucking fingers. And the next exercise, definitely you wanna pluck the low note with the thumb and then use these 2 for whatever 2 other notes you have. And at the beginning it's going to be A, and E on the 3rd and 4th string, like an A5 power chord. And what we're going to do is we're going to play a riff. We're going to start with the pull-off. And what you want to do is after you do that, you can stop the sound and go. You don't really need that percussive sound during the rest, but you can use it if you'd like. Even if you don't really hit the guitar, there's a little bit of that clicking sound that actually I think makes it sound really nice. So the first phrase is based on an A chord and it goes. So on the second measure of that example, that would be measure number 18, we have off. Now the G note on the low string, you're gonna bend it, but instead of resolving, the natural resolution will be to go to resolve on the 5th string. We're gonna go because that A note is going to come on the next measure. If you look at measure 19, while we're still holding that chord, we have that A note that sounds really cool, I think. So then I went to an E chord, E7 or E5. The chords that I write on top of some of these examples are for reference. It's not that the note that you're playing is exactly that chord. It means that this is something that would work if the rest of the band was playing that chord, okay? So over the E chord, I'm going. And this is actually a riff that you definitely want to learn, because if you're learning your basic, like, blues and rock things that we do with 2 strings, like, and then all of those, you can actually play them, with the pick. You can play them with the thumb, but you can also play them like that, like. Let's take a look at that example again. It's on measure number 17, and after the E chord we come back to the top. So when we get to the E, we go. You can repeat the pull-off, or you can simply begin by just going and just play one low note if you prefer. So I'm going to play example number 17 slowly, in case, I hope, you want to play with me. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and oh, by the way, I'm sorry about that. You notice that on top of the A5 symbol, it says 2 eighth notes equal a quarter note and an eighth note triplet. That means it's shuffle, okay? It's shuffle, it's with swing. So that means that we change from going like tat 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 tat, counting our eighth notes like this, to counting tat 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 with that swing shuffle feel that is very typical in so many songs. So again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and measure number 25, 26, from 25 to 30, what I did is I wrote a couple of licks that you can actually use to continue and create like a little bridge to that part. If you want to loop that and this part together, you have like a little jam that you can do. For this one, on measure number 25, suppose that we're on an A7, and now we're getting into some intervals that are also very much used, and that's the 6. And this is an interval you definitely want to learn, and it's really easy to just pluck it with 2 fingers. So the thumb takes care of the low note, and the index takes care of the high note. It's just that simple. We're gonna go up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna play. That would be for the A7. Now notice that on measure number 25, what I'm doing is I'm holding this note as a pedal on the high end. And then I'm playing, but I'm holding that, I'm plucking that note every time, so it gets, I could have even done it for the first note, like, then I transpose the same lick to C. On the E7 at the end, what I did is I used a technique that we went over a couple of weeks ago when we went over the blues finger picking, which is the so you can see a lot of different combinations of things that you can do with your fingers. Next week we're going to be doing more, and it's going to be more about jazz and how to use the fingers to play some of that style. So back to measure number 25, we have 27 over the C7, we play the exact same lick. And then what I did is I put a D and an E to end the phrase, like. Now try to take all of these little licks that I show you, or any licks that you learn, and try to put them in different places and try to get a lot of juice out of them. Don't just play them the way they are written. You know, you can create a lot of things with simple ideas like this. Like you can go. When you, if you create a backing track of your own, which I think you should do, by the way, I think backing tracks are great for practicing, but I think if you really want to get into improvisation and soloing, your best friend is a looper, because you need to create your own, I believe you really need to create your own rhythm tracks so that you can get used to playing rhythm and playing lead, and also so that you can have a reality check on how good your rhythm is. Think about this. If you play something into your looper and you hate jamming over it because it's too busy, because it's not in time, or for whatever other reasons, when you're playing with someone else, that's how that person is probably going to feel about soloing over your rhythm. So it's a really good idea to practice yourself with a looper and be able to create your part so that you can improvise and use all these elements. Now, if you do that, you can make the D and the E7 measures. You can double those two measures and go, for example, C, and play like 2 bars of E. It kind of makes a nicer, longer phrase. And then after that, when you go, how that works? Repeat. That's how you can make a nice loop of that, so that you can improvise and use some of the other ideas I'm going to show you to play a solo over that riff and then over the chords that follow. On measure number 31, I'm just showing you some simple licks that a lot of people probably already know. And if you've never done this with your fingers, again, you can use any combination of fingers you want. You can, whenever you have two notes on the same string or strings that are next to one another, you can just use two fingers, but you can also always use the index and the thumb. Just experiment different ways, as I always say, and then find what works for you. On measure number 31, we're going to start with the bend. I'll do that slowly. Pull off. Now remember, some of these pull-offs are optional. You can pull off or not pull off. These are just small details, right? You can go no pull off, pull off. And at the end, I have that, something that we also went over on the fingerpicking blues style, that when you take the minor third of the chord, that's an A chord, so that C is the minor third, and you have the E, and then you slightly bend. You can also do it without the bend. Or just play one note. Or change positions. Always take the licks and try to figure out different ways to do them, because when you're actually improvising, you're not always going to be in a perfect position for whatever note you need to play next. So it's a good idea to have different options for resolving your licks or starting your licks, so that you can do them in different parts of the neck in different situations. So that was measure 31 and 32. Then following that, E7, you do the same thing. Notice that I use a lot my thumb. I just noticed that on the third string there. Now, do I always do that? Probably not. I probably did it because it was there. Like, it was already there. It was more comfortable for me to go. But that also works if you feel more comfortable doing that. On measure number 35, we're going to go back to an interval that is very important because it's present in so many songs, and that's the 6. In that interval, we have it like here for a D7. That's on the 11th fret, that's F sharp, and the root of the chord D here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna play a triplet going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then we're gonna move that whole step down. Now another diatonic step down. Why did I say diatonic instead of whole step? Well, because what's happening is that each of these two notes is going to the next note of the scale. This one is going to move a whole step, but this one is going to move a half step, because those are the notes that are in the scale. Then we're going to get to this position for the A, and we're going to slightly bend this note. Again, we have a double stop where one note is being held in position and the other one is being bent. From measure number 35, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. I was at a blues jam one time and I saw this guy that was playing with a pick, and all of a sudden in the middle of his solo he took the pick you know, he was hiding the pick with some other fingers, and he started just playing with his index finger. I had never seen that before until I saw that guy do it. I think I've seen also Steve Ray Vaughan do that, playing with just one finger and plucking a lot of with a lot of power, doing triplets. When you do something like that, it's really important that you are muting the other strings. Now, when you are finger picking, it's actually not that hard to mute because your hand is already there so close to the strings that you always have the skin on the palm of your hand to mute the lower strings. And you can always use, the positions in which you put your fingers help you sometimes mute the strings. For example, if I want to play with a lot of power, see what's happening there is that this string has no sound and neither do these three. And that's because I'm, this one, those. Because I'm muting them. And I'm simply going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can use that a lot. You can also hit with your index. One more time on measure number 38. You can end on an A there, or you can go make a little tritone there. Sounds kind of cool. A lot of the other licks that I show you can also just play with your thumb. A lot of players play a lot with their thumb. If you watch Jeff Beck playing ballads, he uses his thumb a lot. Also, I've seen Brian May play, I think it's in Bohemian Rhapsody, where there's a part where he plays very sweet notes on his guitar by just using his index finger, Do that lick one more time. Want to play with me? Well, I'll count us in. 1 bar count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's it. The next thing I'd like to show you is if you've learned a lot of your major 7 and minor 7 chords, you might be used to these positions, for example. Of course, you can always pluck, 3 strings and then the thumb, like we do when we play bossa, for example, or some pop music where we use this plucking technique with 3 fingers. But another thing that you can do, if you're familiar with these shapes, is take the middle note, the one on the 3rd string, out of the equation and only play the bass. The index finger is going to take the 4th string, and then your A finger is going to take care of the 2nd string. And now you have this really nice movement. The way that I wrote it, all I did is I wrote, the chords in the C major scale. So that would be the C major. Then we have a D minor. Then we have an E minor, F major, G C7 in the key as the dominant, A minor, then the weird cousin of the family, always the B diminished, and back to C. Now you can take these shapes and get a lot of juice out of them if you use them. It's really nice to put a little bit of effect. You can use your volume pedal and go. Outside of the scale when I played a B minor. Now all I'm doing here is I'm plucking the fifth, the fourth, and the second, and I'm keeping the shapes of the chords but without that middle note. If you're used to playing the chords with that middle note, then it should be even easier. All you have to do is don't play that string. You don't need that finger there, but if you're used to putting it there, you can leave it there. Doesn't really hurt anything as long as you don't play that string. I was using some inversions there. There are once you learn these shapes and you get into these, we can probably cover this as a whole other subject in another lesson, but I'll show you a little bit of it. You can do some inversions with these shapes like that will be an A major chord. So if you're going from C to D, you put a secondary dominant. That means you're going from C to D, you gotta put like something that sounds like an A or an A7 in between, except you want to keep this motion. From C to F, for example. So we're gonna go D minor. Now we're gonna do the same thing we did before. Let me play all of those together. And you can also arpeggiate them, of course. Other styles and other techniques that I use are, for example, you can do a lot of slapping. Let me get a sound for that. Check this out. So when you do that, it's kind of like the way bass players do it. You play the regular note with your thumb, and then you pop the string like that. Makes that popping sound. You can also do that. Of thumb and index finger there. Take one note, you know, take like your pentatonic scale, pre-bend one note and go pop it, then release the bend, pull off. the example on measure number 45 actually goes like this. What did I write? Ta, 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 ta. You can go. Measure number 45 and 46. Let's do that slow. Or, sorry, that's what I wrote. It's hard for me to see what I wrote. My eyes are not getting any younger. Let's slide that one. We're gonna slide that note, that's gonna make it easier. So we're gonna go. Then after that, instead of going, we're gonna slide that like. Again, on 45. I forget the slide. There it is. Move it up. Back. Move it. Move it around, just play around with it. As I always say, the most important part is that you take any elements, maybe not all the elements that somebody shows you in a lesson. You take one or two things and you try to do them in different contexts. You put them all over the neck, put them in different tonalities, try them over different chords and see what happens. One of the things that several students have asked me in the past is, you know, when you get that funky rhythm that you do with the pick, how can you do that with your fingers? I'm talking about, like, you know, when you play things like and you get that whole scratching thing, which it's actually really easy to do with a pick. And then there are these right? So how can you do that with your fingers? Well, there are a couple of ways that you can do it. You can put your hands kind of like close like that and strum like this. I'm basically going up with the thumb I have some nail, and then down with these two fingers like that, but the hand is pretty much moving like this the whole time. But I discovered that you can actually take the rumba flamenco technique and use it for this, and it works actually really nice. Check this out. If you learn your basic rumba flamenco strumming pattern, so once you learn how to do that, you can totally apply it to something like this, and now you get what I wrote in example number 47, which is so as you can see, you can totally use this technique and very effectively. Now, you can not only use that technique for this type of funky thing, You can also play your power chords with this technique, you know, and play your a lot of that technique. That's also a technique that I learned from flamenco, which is called martillo, which is when you actually get your fingers like that, so the thumb is going to give the other finger some leverage. In this case, I'm just doing it with my index. So you put your finger where it's being held by another part of your hand or your thumb, and then you shoot it out. I'm using these other shapes, the one that we went over before. Alright, I say we play one more time the example that I did on measure number 17, which is the one that actually kind of inspired me to write this lesson, because I was fooling around with that. You know, that riff that is so well known because it's in songs. So, measure number 17, one more time. You do the pull off, then you got this melody on the bass. Okay, and then for the E, we have. So from 17 again, and then we're gonna continue, we're gonna repeat at the end of bar number 24. And then, I wanna know if you have any questions. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Any questions today? We have a question from Sister Christian. I have troubles with my notes, volume. So as I was saying, you want to try this, sorry for the technical difficulties, and you want to turn off the volume on your guitar, and first make sure that you can actually plug the strings at the same volume without the help of the amp, so that the EQ in your amp or the type of sound that you're using cannot accentuate more maybe the high end or the low end depending on the EQ that you're using. So first try that. Now, I don't know if you're talking about between the thumb and these fingers. I mean, you're not telling me which ones sound louder, but generally speaking, you just want to practice that either on an acoustic guitar or on an electric guitar with no sound, and start trying to get all the notes to sound very evenly. Other than that, another thing that you can do is you can experiment with the angle of the neck of the guitar, because what happens is if you're using all your fingers, like, you know, not everybody's hand is the same, but typically this finger is longer. This finger, the index, is shorter than the middle finger, but for the guitar that's not a problem because you're like that. So the length of these two fingers is actually perfect for going on those two strings. But when you try to use this finger, now this one is shorter and it's a little bit farther from the strings than the other ones sometimes. So you want to make sure that you find the right angle between your hand and the neck of the guitar. You can also slide your thumb in this direction or that direction until you can find that you can have all the fingers on the strings before you start plucking. If you need more help with that, check out week 1 of this series where we talk about full plans and free strokes and rest strokes and all that stuff that we covered on week 1. You can see it on the archives. Taco Tuesday says, I find that using my fingers on electric helps me control the unwanted noises that come with more volume and gain. Do you find this to be true also? Yes, absolutely, yes. I mean, when I play with a pick, which I do, I play both with the pick and with my fingers on electric, acoustic, or Spanish guitar, or on anything really. But yeah, absolutely. When I play with my pick, you know, I also use my hand. But when you're playing with your fingers and your hand is open like that, you have a lot, like this part of the palm to cover low strings, as I mentioned before. So that helps a lot. I do find that playing with your fingers is a really effective way of being able to hit one note. You actually strum my guitar right now, you're gonna get this, right? Because the only note that is actually ringing out is that one. What do you sometimes you're playing with you? and over the pickups, but sometimes over the upper part of the fretboard. I didn't do that intentionally, but I know that I play, whether it's with the pick or with my fingers, sometimes I'll play closer to here, sometimes I'll play closer to here, because you get different sounds. You know, this is I don't know if the computer is really going to catch this, but when you see that sound, it's more trebly. As you get closer to the neck, as you play closer to this direction, it gets a little bit warmer. See, that's brighter and warmer. It's a very small difference, but it's a difference that makes a difference when you're trying to be very, specific about the sound that you're trying to get. Also, sometimes maybe I just do that by default without really thinking about it. But I do know that if I wanted something to sound, particularly with the pick, if I wanted something to sound very bright, obviously I'll play it here. But if I wanted to sound warm, see, the sound is different here. Pull-offs and hammer-ons can help you a lot when you are finger picking on electric. Well, if there are no more questions, I will thank you for being here, and then next week we're going to be covering some jazz techniques. We're going to be working on bass lines, next week. Hope you enjoy the lesson.